Hallelujah. Say praise the Lord. Well, in the camp, we talk about soul winning. And then last week, we talked about our role as ambassadors of Christ. Okay, now let's look at another side topic that goes along with that. And that is on the subject of stewardship. Say stewardship. When we talk about stewardship, normally what comes to mind is about money. That's the first thing that people think of. But the concept of stewardship in the scriptures is a lot richer than that. In fact, a steward in the Bible doesn't own the money. He manages the money. Okay, because the moment you equate it with money, it has a different implication. It's still biblical. But a steward in the Bible is a very qualified person. We will learn that as we progress today. The equivalent of a steward in the scriptures today is like a CEO. At the very least, a general manager. So this person is a very qualified person. That's why when the Bible, for example, talks about ministers being stewards of the household of faith, you're talking about very qualified people. Of course, that has been watered down today. When I talk about husbands, now I'm referring especially to husbands. Of course, our times have changed. There's a lot of single parents today. So if it's a single parent situation, it will be on the mother, if the mother is the one taking care of the child. But in the scriptures, on a two-parent family, the husband is the steward of the house. Now that speaks volumes on qualifications. As a steward of the house, the husband has to have certain qualifications so that he can be a good husband to his wife, and a good father to his children, and a good manager of the affairs of the house. Now those qualifications are now being minimized today. In fact, people will say, well, I'm no longer happy, I want to be married. Bad reason to be married. If you are unhappy, that's why you want to be married, just shoot yourself, you know. It's not gonna work that way. People find out that if you want to be happy and so you get married, oh, that's a big mistake. If you're not ready in a marriage life, it may just kill you, okay? And those of you who are not married, sometimes you look forward to being married saying, wow, this is going to be a wonderful life and I'm going to be floating in the sky. No, you're going to be seeing stars most probably. Somebody beat you up, you know, and so you saw stars. But the responsibility is a wonderful thing. You know, being married is one of the best blessings that God can give into your life. But if you approach it unprepared, you may think it's a curse. And I think we have lived long enough to know that unless you can manage your household well, it's going to be extremely difficult. It's going to be very challenging. Proof, over 50% of our marriages ends up in divorce. It is not as they think it is. But if you love God and you have been prepared properly, then you can be a very good steward of your house. You know, you take care of the babies, you clean them up, you keep your wife happy, you keep your husband happy, right? I mean, most of you look lonely now as I talk about that. I mean, maybe I should change my topic, you know. A steward, because he is an underling, there has to be a lot of humility, okay? If there is no humility, the stewardship will fall. For example, I have heard this, and you have heard the same thing, a person with no job, looking for a job, begging to have a job. Suddenly, he's got a job. He was hired by this benefactor, by this employer, and so he's got a job. As a job, he's one of the stewards of the job. If you are working for a company, one of your stewardship is to make sure that the company prospers. But then this employee begin to be big-headed, begin to make wild claims saying, I made my boss a millionaire. No, you did not. He's already a millionaire before you were hired. But what happened is, for example, he's handling the business of finances. He is looking, and I have seen this with employees, especially on account on accounting, they begin to see, whoa, this person the company is making millions of dollars. He begin to think some of that money is mine. He forgot he's just a steward. You see? And so then you begin to have some of these outlandish demands. I remember we have a music person here before. Of course, we have annual reports back then. And he saw the figures of what our church is taking in. We were taking in during the time something like $500,000 per year, which is very small, you know. And he looked at that and he talked to me and says, Pastor, say I would like $2,000 per week. I said, where did you get the idea? And then he said, $2,000 per week, and I want to be in the church service only once per week, and I want to practice the choir just once a week, and I want to conduct the choir just once a week. $2,000 per week. I said, wow. I said, that's $8,000 a month. And he said, yes. I figured that I need to have that. I said, well, congratulations. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, congratulations to the church who offered you the job. I said, because certainly that is not here. I said, and by the way, whoever offers you that kind of figure, I said, you better double check, because that is probably false. He said, yeah, but the church is around $500,000 per year. I said, have you ever computed how much our mortgage per month? Have you ever computed the following things? And he's got no idea what I was talking about. You see. Now I'll tell you this now. A lot of churches, especially small churches, their pastors doesn't manage their churches very well. You've got a small church of 50 people with 5 staff. That's a bad steward right there. Where are you going to get the money to pay those people? You see? And so sometimes you have little churches with 500 secretaries and 200 staff, and they're very happy. Well, where are you going to get the money? It's part of stewardship. That's why you know, and that's why I address marriage right away with the young people. Sometimes a young person will earn a salary. Whoa, I'm making $15 an hour. They thought it's $1 million. You know how much $15 per hour is? Yeah. You can go to McDonald's, and have lunch, and then grow big and get fat or something like that. But that's not going to be enough. The government will take taxes, and so you get a little bit of money. You want to buy a brand new car. You can't even afford a rental. This is part of the examples of what I call as bad stewardship. I always tell you the story about Andres Soriano when they were beginning. They were already making millions. They started a small business and it grew. And they were living in this house, and they were driving this old car. And the children of Andres Soriano, the original, began to say, Dad, making money. Let's buy a new house. Let's buy new cars. We can afford it. And the dad says, yes, we can. We can afford all of those. But the dad says, if we do, we are eating our capital. We are eating our principal. He said, give me a few more years. If you allow me to have few more years and allow me to make this money, make more money, you will be able to buy any car that you want, and you can buy any house that you want. And the children listen. That is good stewardship. Now, that is referring to finances. But in biblical stewardship, the money part is the smallest part. There is a stewardship of the soul. Like be stewards of your own house. Money, although it looks big, it's the least of your consideration. It really is. The stewardship that is more difficult is navigating through relationships. What do you do when your wife is unhappy or when your husband is unhappy? What do you do when somebody gets sick? You have kids. They started coming to teenage years and they think they are in love, and they think they are ready to get married. They don't know how to spell their name yet. And have you ever seen your child, somebody give them a gift of $20, say a birthday, they get this $20 bill. Man, they feel like they're millionaires. Oh, Mom, I've got $20. And you look at that, yeah, so let's go to the mall. Whatever. Oh, I'll buy these shoes, I'll buy that. Maybe you want to buy some toothpick or something, with that $20. But they were overwhelmed with $20 and they thought they're millionaires. Why? Because they're ignorant. You see? How do you manage schooling when you're old in school? How do you manage your time? That's stewardship. look at the students. You're given a homework, you're given some papers, and you say, "Wow, I've got 15 weeks in one semester. I've got time," so you go to the party. And then 10 more weeks, "I've got time." You go, "Oh, that's easy. It's only 10 pages." "I've got time." You've got 2 more weeks. And then you woke up one day and you says, "Whoa, the paper is due tomorrow." What happened? You're a bad steward. You see? This management of life is a big thing. Now, when it comes to the theme of the winning of souls, if you don't know how to manage soul winning, it can destroy you, you know. Like some leaders, because they are very immature, they think that they will control people's lives. Their members begin to ask whom they will date. Some of you were part of those churches before. How long will you visit your parents? What job they will take? And they begin to micromanage everything. And so it gave birth to dictatorial leadership because they don't know how to manage themselves. Some of you feel that like you're burning out. You know, you just came from a vacation, you say, "I need a vacation," because you are not managing yourself well. Very popular today is the concept of self-leadership, because there's a lot of people who can lead others, but they cannot control themselves. That's bad stewardship. That's why sometimes we say that we are running out of time, when actually we're not. We are just mismanaging our time. Look at our students. Say, "I have no time." But look at them. They have time to watch the movies. They have time to go to the parties. They have time to play video games, and they stay until late at night. And then comes the examination, they flunk, and you ask them, "Why did you fail?" "I'm very busy. I can't manage I don't have enough time." Listen, all of us were given by God the same amount of time. How many hours a day did God give you? How many hours? I have the same number of hours. Yeah. Anybody here with longer hours from God? Have you noticed? By the way, the president of the U.S. is very busy, Donald J. Trump. How many hours did God give him? Oh, 24 also. Same number of hours. 24 hours. Those CEOs that fly in and out of the country on charter flights, how many hours did God give them? 24 also. What we need to do is to learn how to manage that time. That's part of stewardship. So most of the time, when a person says, "I have no time," what it means is this: you mismanage my time. One of the complaints of my wife is sometimes she'll tell me, "You need to give me a maid," you know, because of all the amount of work that she does. I said, "No, you don't need a maid. What do I need? You need to cut some of your activities. Because she can go crazy sometimes doing this, doing that. And sometimes she's wondering, you're not helping. I don't like those activities. I'm old now. You know, I'm no longer 21 years old. I brought James, my third son, for the first time in the gym the other day, you know. So I thought, you know, because how old is James? 13 years old? 14. Oh, you don't know also. He's 14, okay. So I know I cannot train him yet in weights. If I train him in weights at that age, I can ruin him physically. But I know there are certain things he can do. He can run. At the age of 12, you can start running, you can start jogging. Your body can take that. So I put him in the treadmill, and I said, let's just do this. I said, you know, well, I forgot I'm old, and he's super young. Man, that boy just destroyed the treadmill. He barely drank anything. He was running for 1 hour. And I was looking at him, the more I look at him, the more I feel old. You know what I'm saying? Because he's strong, and sometimes when you're strong like that, you think that you can just do this and do that. You are not managing yourself. Okay? Have you seen a marathon runner? He doesn't sprint on the first leg. You have to manage your strength. You regulate your heartbeat. You make sure that You have the stamina, and you don't just simply say, whoa, there's a Chicago Marathon this coming October. I will run. And you have never jogged and you're going to run the Chicago Marathon. You're going to die. Because you have to manage yourself and you begin to pace yourself. That's part of management. That's why stewardship is very rich. And it's a very big teaching in the scriptures. But of course, we will concentrate on the subject of our lives, spirituality, winning souls, making disciples, and all of those things. The other lessons, we can draw them along as we read some passages. Let's start with the most basic approach. What is a steward? It is referring to a manager or household affair manager. Like Joseph was a steward on the house of Potiphar. So, a steward is responsible for everything, the ins and outs. There was a point after Joseph started making money for Potiphar, Potiphar doesn't even know how much money he has. He became extremely wealthy. He doesn't know how much money he has. The manager does. I like the story of Mariano Kay, founder of Mercury Drug. At one time in the Philippines, the most successful businessman was Mariano Kay. At another point, it was Narciso Padilla. But during the time when Mariano Kay was the most successful businessman, wherever Mariano Kay goes, everybody goes. I mean, everybody goes because if Mariano Kay started this, must be something good. So they will buy real estate wherever there is a Mercury Drug. Well, the thing with Mariano Kay is this. He's got an eye for talents. He's not the one doing it himself. He's got an eye for talents. When he was a young businessman, his bank is in Divisoria, he's transacting business, getting loans, and every time he goes to the bank manager will say, will call somebody, his accountant, and say, he will help you. And this guy is always being called. Every time he's got a problem. You got a problem with your money, he will call this manager. Well, Mariano Kay got big. And he got to talk to lawyers, to other managers. Well, he got big, he needs to hire. So the first thing he did, he said, I need a good accountant. He went to the bank, called the accountant and said, how much money were you making? Now, I forgot during that time how much money he was making, but let's just say during that time, well, I'm making 1,000 pesos. Mariano Kay looked at him and said, go work for me, 2,000 pesos. He doubled the salary of every good person that he likes. He said, this is my best investment. Well, he became the most successful businessman at one time. At one point, we were trying to borrow, our church in the Philippines, we were trying to borrow something like 2 billion pesos from him, And Mariano Kay, of course, is a billionaire, so he has the capacity. So my pastor went to his office, and he was asking him questions. What about this? What about that? And Mariano Kay will push a button in the intercom within the company and say, oh, I don't know that. This guy knows this. Every information that my pastor asked, Mariano Kay did not answer. He has an employee, a steward, who was able to answer. And because he's got faithful stewards, his house went well. It became very successful. That's why the success of the household of faith depends on our stewardship. During that time, a steward is not only in charge of food, but finances, everything about the whole house, the repair of the house. I mean, for example, we know this now in a small scale. Some of you buy a car and you're a bad steward of your car. You don't even know you need to put gasoline for it to keep on running. Are you listening to me? Some husbands here complain, my wife doesn't just drive. He doesn't know that they need to put gas. Some of you are bad stewards. You don't know that you have to change the oil. Yeah. And you don't know that you have to change some of you lose your tire because you don't even know you have to rotate your tires. You think as long as it's running, it's running. Well, you don't rotate the tire, it will wear off faster than you should. That's part of stewardship. And so now you complain, well, my car is broken. Well, you bring it to the shop, it's dry, there is no oil. When if you have just been putting oil or changing oil, it would have save you a lot of problem. It's called stewardship. That's why some of the problems that we have is actually because of our bad stewardship. That's why if we begin to take this to heart and begin to manage our lives well, it will go well with us. Now, this is also what you may call as a chief slave. So a steward is also a chief slave. That's why Joseph is our prime example. Daniel was also a very good steward. Prime example. Chief slave. Maybe educated, but chief slave. Now, incidentally, in the church, leaders are called stewards. Now, again, I said earlier, when you are a steward, you don't own the money. You don't own the house. You are managing it. Now, the Bible clearly says, the leaders, we are stewards of the household of faith. Meaning, for example, if I am a steward in this house, I don't own this house. Somebody owns this house. Well, the one who owns this house is God. And we became just stewards. Don't ever think, because if you abuse that position, don't ever think that it's yours. Joseph, well, Potiphar was always out. He was a soldier. And in those days, there were no cell phones, there were no cars. And so when they have a campaign sometimes, a soldier can be out for 1 year, for 2 years. The least that they will be out is around 1 month to 3 months. So the wife is lonely. Okay? Now, in the history of Egypt, they have a lot of stories about stewards committing improper sexual relationship with their mistress. Why? The husband is out. And in the history of the wife of Potiphar, one of the literatures I've read says that the morality of Potiphar's wife is very doubtful. They say this was not the first time that Potiphar's wife approached a steward in their house. Now remember, Joseph was not the first steward. Okay, he was a new steward, was not the first steward. They say that this is not the first time that Potiphar's wife got an inappropriate sexual relationship with a steward of the house. Those stewards forgot one thing. Although they managed the whole house, they were not the owner of the house, and they were not the husband of Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife. They were not the husband. So they began to sleep with Potiphar's wife. In fact, one commentator that I've read says, some of them were killed. That's why Potiphar knew that Joseph was not guilty, because he just sent him to jail. Okay? Because there were witnesses, there were slaves who will attest to the integrity of Joseph. Joseph, although he knew more about the household of Potiphar, he could have stolen money from Potiphar and Potiphar would not know. He kept this thing in mind. He said, I am just a slave. You see? I am just a slave. It doesn't matter if I feed all the house. I feed Potiphar's wife, I feed his children, I feed the other slaves, I give them salary. That is what the steward does. He said this thing to his mind, I am just a steward, I'm still a slave. I just manage this, I don't own this. Therefore, there are certain boundaries I cannot cross. Because sometimes you begin to think you're a steward, you own the house, you own the money. No, we don't own the house. We don't own the money. The moment you forget that, that's when you trespass. Trespass means you go over the line. You know why we sin against God most of the time? We forget we are not gods. We always cross over the line. God says, these are my prerogatives, these are your prerogatives. We always cross over the line. God says, this is what is right. We say, I'm crossing over. I'm going to push the boundary. Then you forgot you are not God. God is God. There are certain prerogatives as divine. We don't have those prerogatives. But the moment you forget that, then you start becoming a bad steward. Let's look at the expectations now of a steward, okay? Let's turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 1, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, is this mine? Starting on verse 1. Let's look at the expectations. By the way, you're a steward of your life. You're a steward of your time on earth also, okay? 1 Corinthians 4 verse 1, let a man regard us in this manner, as servants of Christ. The word there is steward also. The Greek word is stewards. As servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. In this case, moreover, it is required of stewards that one be found trustworthy. Say trustworthy. I mean, that is a requirement. But to me, it is a very small thing that I may be examined by you or by any human court. In fact, I do not even examine myself, for I am conscious of nothing against myself. Yet I am not by this acquitted. But the one who examines me is the Lord. Therefore, do not go on passing judgment before the time. That means no premature judgment, which most people are guilty of. But wait until the Lord comes, who will both bring to light the things hidden in darkness and disclose the motives of men's hearts. And then each man's praise will come to him from God. Now this is about the real status of a steward. It is always very easy for any leaders and even non-leaders in the church to be big-headed, you know. Well, let me put it this way. Your head becomes bigger than your heart, okay? We become big-headed, small-hearted, okay? The proper attitude should be big heart, small head, okay? I have a friend, in fact, compadre. This guy has been with his wife. They're janitors of our church in the Philippines. They make minimum wage. They are uneducated, you know. And if you ask them, they'll cook, they'll do everything, they'll clean. Parang kiti-kiti, they'll jump at every, you know, a typical Filipino worker. Well, they are very faithful to the Lord. They go to church, they pay their tithes, and the Lord starts blessing them. They were asked to manage a store. And so they become the manager for the first time. They resign from church. They manage a store. On the first week of managing the store, the wife forgot that they're just manager. She started acting like Adonia. In 3 months, they lost the job. Yeah, they become big-headed. You know, big-headed. You know, like a typical person. Now you are receiving orders, and you can tell this from attitudes. Now you are receiving orders. Suddenly you are given a title. Now you are barking orders, and you are meaner than anybody else, and you are humiliating people. What happened? You have a big head, a small heart. For a steward, you need to grow big heart. Shrink your head. Because if you reverse that, you will begin to forget who you are. Now, there are several responsibilities or titles that a steward has in the Scriptures. In fact, if you read from verse 6 down of 1 Corinthians 4, these are the other responsibilities and titles of a steward. A planter or a farmer, a waterer, a servant, a fellow worker, a brother, God's temple. Those have been given a trust. I like that thing. What you have been given is just trust. Okay? Trust. I've read that in big companies, say they will be hiring CEOs, especially CEOs. These are multi-million-dollar companies. And they will be hiring CEOs. And there will be tons of applicants. If you look at the resume of each of these applicants in that top job, all are qualified. You cannot say nobody is qualified. So how does the chairman of the board choose who the CEO is going to be? One thing, trust. Because the skills are there. You know the story of Brother Willie. Their company has so many presidents that stole millions of pesos. I mean, some are politicians because it's a multi-billion-dollar company in the Philippines, and just tons of presidents that has been before him, and general managers that were just stealing money. But Willie told me that when he took over the company, there was a standing request for a new printing machine. So he went on a foot inventory as to what their machines are. He found one big machine with cover. It's a brand new printing machine. The request was already given for a brand new printing machine. And there was this printing machine not even used. Because every time they said they purchased a machine, they were stealing millions and millions of pesos. And there are club membership involved in everything else. And so the boss was just pissed. And so he said, these people are stealing from me. And so he asked this guy, one of the ex-presidents, I need to hire a new president. And the name of this person is Peter. Peter asked, what do you want from your president? And said, one qualification. Well, actually, two qualifications. Just two qualifications. What? Honest and trustworthy. It didn't say 10 years in business or honest and trustworthy. Because you have people who are stealing and stealing and stealing. You know Manila doctors, Manila Medical Center. The one by COP. Manila Medical Center. Dr. Campos is the owner of that hospital. He came to us one day and said, boy, I would love to hire all of your nurses in my hospital. And my pastor asked him, why? He said, the number one problem in Manila Medical Center is thievery. What do you mean? Supplies being stolen by nurses. Yeah. He said, that's the number one problem. And he said, I found out that if I hire a Christian, a born-again Christian, and then he said this, those who came from your church, they're the honest ones. Yeah. So he said, I would love to hire all of your nurses. You see? Because there comes a point, the skills are there, trustworthy. And so here, trust. It's a trusted person. One of the titles is those who are at the end of the procession. A man who is supposed to be condemned in the arena. These are stewards. They will be executed when they have a problem. A spectacle. Sometimes Paul used the term, we are fools, we're weak, we're dishonored, we're destitute. Because listen, if you are, say for example, you are a, how will you call it? A butler, for example. A butler is a higher position, right? Or I know how they call it, a mayordomo, something like that. Well, it's a higher position, but you are still a slave. You are still a maid. And so, it doesn't matter. People will come to the house, they will appreciate your work, but at the end of the day, you're still a maid. Now, if you become big-headed and you begin to think you own the house, then you display some inappropriate behavior. What if the boss sees it? Then you are fired. All of us in the eyes of God are valuable. We have callings, we have skills, but listen, that thing goes into your head. You begin to think you are Jesus, you are God, you're gone. People forget we are stewards. A steward is a slave in the Bible, okay? And what we can learn from this is that stewards are those who don't demand great titles or status. They are those who serve and takes on much responsibility. One of the parables is, Jesus said that the master of the house came, he's tired, he wants to eat. His slave, a farmer, was coming from the field in the heat of the day, and he was very tired. Jesus said, when that farmer walks in, will the master of the house says, oh, you came from the outside under the heat of the sun. You must be very tired. Let me massage your feet. What do you want? You want some coffee? No. The Bible says, Jesus said this, the master of the house came into the house. He's tired. He's hungry. The farmer who was out under the sun for the whole day, very tired, needs some break. He came in and says, oh, you're back. Why don't you prepare my dinner? I'm hungry. And then after you prepare my dinner, there are leftovers, you can eat. What will the slave says? He will say, I am just doing what I am told. That's a steward. Now, that's the New Testament concept. We lost that. We are losing that. The servanthood attitude. We are beginning to think that we own the house. A steward is a servant. Now, this is an interesting thing. One of the words used here is not doulos. Doulos is a common term for love slave. They use a different term. It's actually, when you search this term that was used here for a servant, have you seen the movie Ben-Hur? No, you don't. Okay. Have you seen a boat movie? The one with the boat, and then there are no motors. There are some people who row the boat. Yeah? You know, there will be, you know those movies, right? So there will be all kinds of paddles going out of the boat, and they are rowing. There is somebody beating the drum. Boom, boom. And they row according to the drum beat. If they beat the drum faster, they row faster. Okay? They are called under rowers. Why under rowers? They are under the deck. Nobody sees them. By the way, if the boat runs fast, who will be honored? Who? You don't know. The captain. If the food is good, who will be honored? The captain. Does the captain row the boat? No. Does the captain cook? No. But he will be honored. Does anybody come to the boat and look and go under the deck and says, whoa, look at these muscular people. Congratulations. No, they are under rowers. This is the word. One of the words used for a steward is an under rower. Why is it important? Because an under rower works very hard under the drum beat. I mean, the guy is a slave. Under rower, underappreciated, unrecognized, but he has to do his job. That's one of the words used for a steward, an under rower. Now, it is important for us to confront these terms because these were the times when it was written and that was in the mind of the authors. These are hard workers. I mean, you are manning the oars. Sometimes their hands bleed. In those days, they have no gloves. They don't ask for wonderful uniforms. The captain of the ship has wonderful uniform. But these guys, I mean, most of them are shirtless. They go naked because they are sweating all the time. They are dirty. They stay under the deck, for goodness sake. They smell. They don't ask for titles. They are under rowers. They do not seek glory for themselves. They don't demand. They don't say, well, it's time for a meal. I want to sit on the head table. I want to be fed first. He doesn't go to the captain and say, hey, Cap, all you do there is give orders. We're hungry. Why, for a change, why don't you serve us a food? Let us eat first. We should have the best steaks. No. Sometimes they're given leftovers. But they work the hardest. Meaning, if you're going to be a steward of God, you don't seek glory for yourselves. You don't want a name for yourself. An under rower is even willing to be taken for granted. Jesus demonstrated this role especially during the Last Supper. What did he do in the Last Supper? He washed their feet. Who washed the feet of the guests? The lowest slaves. You know, now you have, look at your shoes. Even if you don't like your shoes, they are a lot better than the shoes of those days. We have socks. In those days, what they have are sandals. We have better plumbing and sanitary system. Now, in those days, they will, well, now they are cleaning up Manila. You know, you watch the news. Boy, they're cleaning up Quiapo, Divisoria, and all of those things. But if you are in the days when my father was working there, there are horses there, and the horses will feel like they need the bathroom. So it drops on the road. There's a sack. There's a big sack behind the horse. But if it doesn't catch it, they drop all over the place. So if you are in Divisoria with the mud and everything, you don't, especially if there's water, you tiptoe. Because you are walking at dirt. Jerusalem in those days is worse. They throw things on the street, you know. And so what were they wearing? Sandals. So you walk. Therefore, when you enter the house, now those are not Japanese. The Japanese will take off their sandals and they're very clean. But the people of Palestine are not Japanese. They're very dirty, you know. So what happens is when they walk in, it smells. Now, in those days, there are no tables. There are no chairs, rather. There are tables. You remember when John was leaning on the feet of Jesus? Because they will be sitting on the floor like Japanese. They will not squat. They will lean on each other, you know. So they will lean on each other. That's why John was leaning on the bosom of Christ. They will lean on each other. What happens if your feet are not washed? It stinks. So the lowest slave will get a towel, get a bucket, and wash all the dirts. That's what Jesus did. He is willing to be like an under-rower. A steward is also somebody, now from what we read, taking all of those definitions, we are entrusted with a trust. What is the trust that was given to us Christians? We are entrusted with the mysteries of God. Now, a steward in the first century could be in charge of money, in charge of a house, a literal house, in charge of the children, in charge of the feeding of the slaves, other slaves. But us, as children of God, especially the leaders, we are entrusted with the mysteries of God. Say mysteries. Now, when we use the term mystery, what comes to your mind, by the way, when you say mystery? You say something is mysterious. What comes to your mind? Huh? That was a question, guys. What is a mystery? Huh? Unknown? Ano ba? Something to be discovered. Okay. Now we are entrusted with the mysteries of God. Okay. Black magic. Iba na yun. Okay. Well, the mystery here is different. Mystery is something that was hidden in times past, but is now made known. Okay. Something hidden in times past, but is now made known. You know, when they begin to discover that promiscuity among teenagers became very rampant, they increased. When they instituted early sex education. Right now, I think kinders or first graders, my kids, Joel's language has changed since all of this garbage in the U.S. curriculum took place. He's a little young boy. And then you have to be taught sex education and these LGBTQ things. You know, the mind of Joel has changed. Even his language changed. Yeah. They found out when they started teaching sex education to the children, the sexual promiscuity increased. Why? Because you revealed a mystery to somebody who's not ready for it. Okay? You reveal a mystery to somebody who is not ready for it. Kenneth Copeland was talking about guns at one time. He said, hey, listen, you better watch your guns, he said, you know, he lives in Texas, so everybody owns a gun. And he said, his son, John, the only son, was already coming of age, something like 13, 14 years old. So he told his son, I need to teach you how to hunt. They like hunting. I need to teach you how to shoot a gun. So he took one of his shotguns and said, son, this is a shotgun. And I said, son, this is a shotgun. His wife called him inside the house and said, hold it, okay? Just hold the gun. I'm going to come and teach you how to handle the gun, how to deal with the gun. So he went down to the house. As soon as he walked into the house, BAM! Shotgun went off. And he came back. There's a big hole in their garage. Why? Because he was not shown properly the mysteries of a gun. Now listen. We are entrusted with the mysteries of the gospel. If you don't present it properly, Okay? If you don't teach it properly, people may misuse it. And that is what is happening today. And that's why the stewardship of the gospel is very important. That's why, look, some people say, you in the Middle East, you Christians, Christianity is bad. Why? Because of the Crusades. Christians killed a lot of Muslims. Who said that Christians killed a lot of Muslims? They are not Christians. People think they are Christians. No, that's not part of the teaching of Christianity. They were religious people, the knights. They were called, they have a religion, but that is not Christianity. New birth is different. When somebody slaps you, give the other cheek. That is not Christianity. It was not revealed to the Middle Easterns properly. What they think when they think of Christianity are the crusaders who slaughter thousands upon thousands of Muslims. By the way, the sad thing about this is this. You begin to study history. When the Christians were being persecuted before, you know who came to their aid? The Muslims. Because the Muslims are very hospitable. They will welcome into their house. There is even a history, a part of our history that says when the Jews were being persecuted, the Muslims gave them quarters. Whoa, but the Crusades came, and they come wielding swords, possessing lands. And so these new Muslims, they begin to think, oh, that's Christianity. And listen, that is not Christianity. The gospel was not presented properly. Okay, you sinned. You come to your minister and say, I have sinned. He says, okay, why don't you pray 10 Hail Marys, 5 Our Fathers, and give me $200? What is that? You have not introduced the gospel properly. Okay, you disagree with your pastor, and he said, when you leave the church, you will be run over by a jeepney or something like that. You have not introduced the gospel properly. This mystery of the gospel is something that we have to be a good steward of. Not only that, you begin to preach, you begin to teach, live right, discipline. You are undisciplined, your life is wrong. What happened? You are not revealing or handling the stewardship of the gospel properly. This is one of the reasons why people don't want Christianity. I'll give you a good example right now. A lot of people right now hate Donald Trump. And maybe some of you hate him. I'll ask a simple question. Why do you hate him? Have you seen him personally? Have you shaken his hand? Have you had personal encounters with him? Most probably your answer is no. But why do you hate him? Because some people are mismanaging information. They are not presenting it properly. You see? That is what happened. Now, you know, I may disagree with Juan Ponce and really with this interview, but you know, it's too old. He never even win this time. But he was being interviewed regarding martial law, because we have a lot of concept about martial law. We live under martial law in the Philippines for so many years. You know, we saw it got declared, we saw it get lifted, at least in my lifetime, you know. And so we know those, how do you call that, the curfew hours in the midnight. Man, we were caught once. I was caught with my father once in curfew hours. So there's a lot of words going out. So in really, it's all this was being interviewed. Oh, you guys did this. And he looked and says, you know, you guys, you're giving me information that is just not there. And he said this, we know more than you do. We know what was going on. Now, I will never know perhaps what really happened. But the statement, we know more than you do. But that is the case. I mean, you kids, have you ever come to your parents and say, Mom, my classmates have new shoes. They have new $200 shoes. And your parents says, no, why don't you keep wearing your shoes? It's still okay, it's still new. We'll buy you next year. And you scream at your mom, I hate you, you don't love me. Well, the reason why I say is because you're so ignorant. You don't know how much struggle your parents are having trying to manage the money. If they buy you your shoes, they just spend your next month's grocery budget. What do you want to do? Go hungry? But sometimes some of these things, the parents cannot tell the kids. I mean, for example, if my kids, well, they're no longer, say my kids are 5 years old. Papa, can I have brand new shoes? Don't you know how to? You have no concept of what is budgeting. And my kids are, budgeting? I just need Jordan shoes. I'm paying bills and that. And the kids are overwhelmed. And then they cry. And they don't know what to do. Because you're not supposed to rebuild that yet. Why? They are kids. They're still drinking milk. Let them enjoy life. They'll come to know that in time. You know, for example, these people who are there are certain things that when my wife is angry, I told her there are certain things you cannot tell the kids. You know, like I don't want my wife telling the kids bad words. You know, I don't, because sometimes the mouth is lips, and I will not. I don't approve my wife saying, "Then leave this house. You're no longer welcome here." Whoa! At a certain age, the kids may not be able to take that. Can you imagine telling my kids in pre-K? They were having classmates with divorced parents. One day, I think it was John. He was studying at Inter-American. I think pre-K or something like that. Came to us and to ask my wife, "Mom, when am I gonna have a stepfather?" Whoa! He was introduced that concept too early, and you know what happened? Sometimes it put fear in their hearts. Joel came to me one day and says, "I don't want to get married anymore. The guy is second grade or third grade. I don't want to get married anymore. It's too hard." I said, "What are you talking about? It's just too hard. You're not even third grader." He heard things from television. Yeah, it was too soon. You know how sometimes you hear people complain about college? Our kids, sometimes we don't present it properly. Oh, Joel one day come to me and say, "Oh, Papa, I don't like to go to college." Because James is about to leave Edgebrook. He's going to go to Jones, you know. So he says, "I don't like." And then he came to me seriously one night and says, "Papa, is there a college that is only for 1 month?" I said, "What?" He said, "That's what I want." Because by the way, he hears some of the young people here talk about college, like they're going to die in college. My son cannot handle it. But some people doesn't have enough common sense to realize some people cannot take it. And so my son was so discouraged. "Papa, is there a college that's only 1 month?" I said, "No." I said, "It's around 4 years." And he said, "What about if I become a mechanic?" I said, 9 months training. That is still long. Yeah, he said, "That's still long." Then he said, "Oh, Papa, what about a pastor?" I said, "Son, I'm still studying to this day." "Oh, that's too much." He said. He just wants a college for 1 month. Why? He is overwhelmed. That's why there are certain things that you can't tell. In the gospel, it's the same. We have to become good stewards of the mysteries of the gospel. We are trusted with this. And the Bible says you are supposed to be faithful to it. Faithful. Now, I'll tell you. Now, by the way, some of you have seen this. We have some kids before. The parents left the church and the kid says, we want to stay in the church. And the parents says, "No, we're leaving." "We want to stay in the church." And they come to me and my wife, "We want to stay in the church." You know what happened? The parents did not manage it well. Now, if you really have to go, you have to go, but you have to manage it. You just have to manage it. That's why one of the most difficult things that kids go through is divorce. A lot of and there are studies made on this one. A lot of children, when their parents divorce at their young age, they thought that they are the reason why they divorce. You know, they thought that their young minds cannot handle it. Now, if you are a bad steward of your family, I'm no longer happy. What about my rights? Oh, by the way, in management, sometimes you have to let go of your rights. I told you this. We have a millionaire in our church in the Philippines. He owns different factories. And one day we were just talking. You know, he goes out with me from time to time. One day we were just talking and said, and you know, the union was very strong in the Philippines, Kilusang Mayo Uno. And he was telling me, you know, my employees, some of them are part of the union. He said, boy, they curse me. They said I'm a thief. And he said this. He said, you know, if I sell my factories, I don't need to work for the rest of my life. He said, I'm a millionaire. I have money for the rest of my life. He said, my workers, the janitors, you know, the mechanics, he said, boy, they go home and they sleep for 8 hours. He said, I don't know the last time I sleep for 8 hours. He said, because I do international things. He said, while they're sleeping, I'm on my phone. He said, if my company is closing, I am stressed out. He's got a heart problem. I'm stressed out because if one of my employees is fired, it's a whole family that has no food. He said, this is so stressful. He said, sometimes, he said, I'm wondering why I don't sell my company. I'll just sell it perhaps. He said, I will have no problem. You see. But why is it that he's not giving out his companies? Good stewardship. The moment you handle a situation, meron tayong kasabihan sa Pilipinas about marriage. Hindi ito parang mainit na kanin. You know, when you eat newly cooked rice and it's hot, you put it in your mouth. What happens? It's too hot. You spit it out. Marriage is not like that. You don't say, I'll get married. Oops. Ayoko pala. No, marriage is not like that. Certain things are like that. The same thing when you don't manage well, when you don't counsel your kids regarding their school. I'm going to go to college. To do what? I don't know. So they play around college. That's bad stewardship. Because you are mismanaging your time and you're mismanaging your money. You better sit down with your kids. You know, John has just finished school and he's going to go further education. I have been talking with him. It's not something that John is going to jump back to school. We have been talking. I have been telling him certain things. We have been going back and forth. And most probably he'll go back to school in 2 or 3 years. But we have been talking. Why? Because he's got to manage it. You see? Because if he enters unprepared, he's going to end up wasting his time. Same thing with the gospel. You parents, we are mandated by the Lord to raise our kids in the fear and knowledge of God. You better manage that well. You dads, you cannot tell your kids, okay, go to church. No, you don't tell your kids go to church. What are you supposed to do? You bring them to church. In the scripture it says, let us go into the house of God. It didn't say, you go. The psalmist did not say, oh, I thank the Lord, you go into the house of the Lord. No, I thank God, let us go in the house of the Lord. That is stewardship. That is leadership. And then you teach your kid one thing, and then you do another thing. Whoa, you are mismanaging the gospel. Boy, we're talking about winning souls in discipleship. A lot of the reasons why we cannot win souls and we cannot disciple people, we are not managing our lives well. They look at us and they get confused. Because when it's like it's like, you know, young people, they look at broken marriages and they criticize. If I get married, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it that way. You know what I don't like the most is when young people counsel fellow young people. I mean, you have an ignorant person counseling another ignorant person. Go to somebody older. Go to somebody with experience. You know, because you will mismanage it if you're not careful. So some, oh, we're going to do this, and then they get married, and they realize, boy, it's tough. Boy, it's tough. Because when the rubber meets the road, you will find that the friction is different. The pressure is very different. Our life is a total and a wholesome representation of the gospel. If we don't manage it right, we will fail in making disciples. We will fail in raising our children in the fear and knowledge of God. Okay? Well, I'm not done with the introduction, but we'll get there. Okay? Learn something this morning? We'll continue tonight and next week.